Welcome to today's session on export competitiveness of key textile and clothing exporting countries. In this session, we are going to focus on those countries which have dominated the area of textile and clothing exports in the global market. Now, this is the age of liberalization and globalization, which has led to hyper competition. Liberalization and globalization started with the formation of GATT, which eventually gave way to the formation of WTO, World Trade Organization. And since the formation of World Trade Organization, all the countries, rich or poor, big or small, they became a signatory to the World Trade Organization, and they pledged that they will bring down all types of barriers, tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers, in order to achieve one globe, one world, one market, one nation status. Now, due to liberalization and globalization, eventually over a period of 2 decades, the barriers have been removed to quite an extent, and the natural fallout has been that the global market has become hyper competitive. Now, this is where we are going to see who are the major textile and clothing exporters and what are the reasons because of which these countries have been able to perform so well. Because of hyper competition, the nations are facing a lot of pressure, and this pressure is not just in the domestic markets, because each country's domestic markets are also being catered to by the global brands. So, because of this inordinate pressure, all the nations, while they are struggling within their own domestic markets, they could feel that they have to also focus on exports, because that was the only solution to survival. For example, a brand or a company making a product, selling in the home country since centuries. Now, after globalization, now that company or the brand is facing so much of competition from the global brands. Now, these global brands are also selling in this home country and eating away into the pie, the available pie. So, these companies, these brands in their home country, what they could figure out was that the only way to survive, the only way to exist was to expand their markets and sell more by way of going into the new markets, going into the new countries, and thereby save themselves. Almost all the countries and all those companies and brands in those countries resonated with the same belief that exports is the only solution. Now, in the age of sluggishness, where the economic growth is a daunting task, there has been one bright spot, which is export markets. And particularly, the export market of textile and clothing has been on the rise. We have been talking about textile and clothing for quite some time, and if we go by the data, we see that the textile and clothing export market has been growing faster than the world merchandise trade. And textile and clothing is a very important category amongst all the other products, because textile and clothing is one of the major industry which provides jobs and which provides source of livelihood and a source of income to the majority of the least developed countries and the developing countries. So, despite textile and clothing not having a very big share in the global trade, the share is about 3.9%. Still, textile and clothing matters a lot in the least developed countries and the developing countries. So, therefore, the importance of textile and clothing cannot be overstated. Now, conquering industry challenges, the textile is one of the well established industries in the competitive marketplace. Textile and clothing has continuously expanded and has helped in generating employment as well as generating surplus for the developing nations, particularly. Now, almost all the countries produce textile and clothing in some manner or the other, or in some part or the other. Now, countries are chasing textile and clothing exports for numerous benefits. Because textile and clothing exports, they boost local economy, the state level economy, as well as the national economy. And they, because of donning the mantle of exporting textile and clothing, it also enhances the domestic competitiveness. Because companies started exporting, they also learned about global level quality, productivity, efficiency, and so many other things. And it actually led to an enhanced domestic competitiveness. And then, of course, because companies started exporting to other countries and they could see opportunities in new products, this led to diversification. And of course, textile and clothing exports, it helps in a significant way to gain global market share. Now we come to top 10 textile exporting countries as in 2018. The top slot is taken by China, followed by Germany, Bangladesh, Vietnam, India, Italy, Turkey, USA, Hong Kong, Spain. So we're going to talk about each of these countries one by one, and then we will also talk about some of those major reasons, the driving factors because of which these countries have been able to dominate the textile and clothing space, the textile and clothing export market. So we're going to talk about China first, because China happens to be the largest exporter of textile and clothing in the world. China is the largest manufacturer and exporter of textiles in the world, with an export turnover of $266.41 billion. Now, the factors driving the industry are low cost production, raw material quality is absolutely great, one of the best in the world. The industrial structure is very, very rationalized. They have the most number of special economic zones. They have the most modern high-tech machinery, second only to Japan or Germany. And they have been continuously developing their work process in the domestic market as well as in the global markets, because of which they have been able to carve out a very large niche for themselves in the global trade of textile and clothing. In China, there are 6 sub-industries within the textile industry, and those are: first one is cotton, second is chemical fiber, third is wool, textile and dyeing finishing industry, fourth is textile printing and dyeing finishing industry, fifth is linen textile and silk textile and finishing industry, and sixth is finished textile product manufacturing as well as knitted and woven product industry. So What we're talking about, one is cotton, which is grown in the fields, comes from the nature, chemical fibers, which is primarily the fibers like polyester and nylon, which comes from petroleum. Third one is wool, textile and dyeing finishing industry. Wool comes from the sheep, it's a protein. So they're good with wool, textile and the dyeing finishing industry, and it occupies a significant place in the textile industry. And then China has been able to uh, reach a certain level where the textile printing and dyeing finishing industry has achieved a very high level of consistency, which is unheard of in countries like India and Bangladesh and Vietnam. Fifth one, linen textile, and sixth, silk textile and finishing industry. China happens to be one of the largest producer of linen and silk, and their methodology, the process that they use for growing of rearing of the silkworms and then going with the rest of the processes, it has been fine-tuned to such a level that it has the most smooth surface. If you look at the silk filament from China under the microscope, it has the smoothest surface, unlike the silk that we have in India, which has a very serrated and a rough surface, primarily for the fact that we have not been able to control the environment and the soil and the way we take care of the mulberry plant or the ashoka plant, and that is what affects the quality of the silk which is being produced by the silkworms. So that is the level that has been achieved by China. And sixth one is finished textile product manufacturing as well as knitted and woven product industry. So China is good with knits as well as wovens, and also with finished textile products. The most glaring fact that supports the supremacy of China is the output volume of China textile industry accounts for more than half of the global market. It's somewhere around 46%. China as a single country has a share of 46% in the global market when we're talking about textile industry. So that is the kind of margin, that is the gap between China and rest of the players. We can come to number two, which is Germany. Germany has been very, very famous for the automobiles and for the high-tech machinery and the best of the technological developments that they have given to the world. In terms of textile and clothing industry of Germany has a long history of manufacturing innovation and flexibility. Germany is one of the biggest exporters of knitted apparel cloth like t-shirts and sportswear. They are also one of the biggest exporters of man-made fiber, synthetic yarn and machinery with the export value of $38.99 billion. India imports a lot from Germany, and one of the largest category is machinery and equipment, primarily for the purpose of building production capacity. The country is world's second largest textile exporter, textile and clothing combined, and it's very well known for high quality products. Anything made in Germany means high quality. So they're well known for high quality products and accessories of textile and clothing in the world. And over the recent decades, the country has transformed its production from low cost, high volume to high quality products. So initially, during the 1950s and 60s and 70s, Germany was more into producing mass production of basic products, low cost products, and producing in large quantities. They have gradually transitioned to a country which now focuses on high quality products in textile and clothing. And it's high quality product with high value. Third position, Bangladesh, the most prominent dark horse that this world has seen in the textile and clothing trade in the world. In recent decades, and we are talking about just 2 decades back, Bangladesh was nowhere, and within 2 decades, Bangladesh has emerged as a powerhouse for apparel manufacturing. The country's strengths are low labor cost, it is one of the lowest in the world, and it has a vast workforce. 80% of the economy of Bangladesh is dependent on textile and clothing. They have employed advanced technology and high quality products, which has attracted the major global retail brands to Bangladesh. So brands like Zara and Mango and H&M, everyone flocks to Bangladesh to get their products produced. Bangladesh is a leading textile exporter with a turnover of $38.73 billion, a little ahead of India. Now, the vertical capacities of Bangladesh help global brands to ensure more transparency and coordination in the supply chain. So there are a lot of such outfits related to textile and clothing manufacturing which are vertical in nature. Vertical capacities implies that within one organization, the various steps of the value chain are happening. Meaning to say that one organization is into spinning, and the same organization also does the weaving and then the dyeing and printing, and then also does the conversion of the fabric into ready-made garments. So that is a broad example of vertical capacity. Now, Bangladesh has quite such entities which are fully vertically integrated or vertically integrated to a large extent, and that is what helps the buyers in coordinating easily. One buyer has to coordinate just with one organization, which otherwise would have meant that the buyer would have had to coordinate with the dyers and the weavers and then the garmenting factories and things like that. So because at one place all the things are happening, that leads to more transparency and ease of coordination. Now, the textile industry of Bangladesh has been growing rapidly with the bulk order of value-added items of big global brands. So 10 years back, Bangladesh was playing on its lowest, cheapest labor and low cost of infrastructure and low cost of capital, because of which they could produce the cheapest garments. Now, since last 5 years, Bangladesh has been able to transition from a bulk order manufacturer to a manufacturer of value added items, in which the value per unit is higher than the mass manufacturing orders. And then we go on to the close cousin, again a black horse, probably growing at a pace faster than Bangladesh and fastest in the world, is Vietnam. Now, the textile industry of Vietnam is backed by its low labor cost, lower than Bangladesh, and industry focus on specialization, modernization, and increasing value addition. Now, with an export turnover of $37.93 billion, Vietnam is the top 4th global exporters of textile and clothing. Now, the country's major focus is producing items with high competitiveness in the global market and improving its textile and clothing supply chain. Now, was a war-devastated country with its long-standing war with USA. It has been able to rebound with enough energy, so much so that it has been able to reach the fourth position in global exporters of textile and clothing. They have been low on the infrastructure and other capabilities, which they have been able to steadily eliminate, reduce, purely by virtue of focusing on specialization, modernization, and focusing on value addition processes. Vietnam, by way of focusing on producing such products in which they are really competitive in the global market, and since Vietnam was not in a position to produce textile, they have been able to improve its textile supply chain in terms of importing from the rest of the world and then converting the textile into garments. Now, Vietnam's textile and clothing consumption in both domestic and global market are making deeper inroads into the textile market. So today, if you look at Vietnam, it's not a poor country anymore, and it is an emerging economy. They have been buying a lot of textile, and they've been converting the textile into garments for the purpose of exporting. But of late, Vietnam has also started consuming a lot of textile and clothing, and that is what has helped them make deep inroads into the textile market. Of course, no discussion would be complete without talking about India. Textile and clothing industry in India is among the world's largest producers and exporters. India has always been a producer of textile and clothing. Indian textile industry, it has been broadly classified into two segments, although it can be classified into as many segments depending on the parameters that are being taken into consideration. Now, in this case, we are talking about two segments. First is the unorganized sector, which consists of handloom, handicraft, and sericulture, and which are mostly operated in the rural area. They are operated on a small scale using traditional tools and methods. The second one, of course, is the organized one, which applies modern machinery, state-of-the-art machinery and technology. And this is the segment which has taken up exports in a very large way, and they have set up large facilities for all the steps that are required to convert to make garments and textiles. And this is the segment which has been able to achieve economies of scale by way of mass manufacturing, bulk manufacturing, including basic products as well as value-added products. India has always had a very, very strong advantage in terms of designing and in terms of value addition, in terms of handwork, zari, zardozi, sequins, nalki, katori. India has been a land of ornate clothing. Now, of late, what has happened is that the cost of raw material, the cost of labor, the cost of capital, the cost of infrastructure, it has been on the rise, and this has led to high cost products, which has led to added cost pressure on the value chain. Therefore, yarn production, fabric and apparel exports has become a little expensive and therefore has become less competitive. And that's precisely the reason why India has it stands as fifth largest country with an export turnover of $37.11 billion, which includes both textile and clothing. Although India has the capacity and the capability to do at least a turnover of $200 billion. Now, India is using intensive technology for mass production of textile products. So, when we talk about textile production, India has India employs the state of the art technology in terms of spinning, weaving, processing of the fabrics, and then apparel manufacturing. So, some of the best machines are used in India, and it is of paramount importance that India maintains its position, if not climb the ranks, because a large part of the economy is dependent on textile and clothing manufacturing. Now we come to Italy. Italy is a developed nation, part of Europe, adjoining to the Mediterranean region. The Italian textile industry holds a prominent place in apparel and fashion world. The most powerful designers in the world, most of them hail from Italy. They are known for their distinctive style and the finishing of the products is one of the best in the world. Italy is known for its leather processing and footwear, but at the same time the Italian textile industry still holds the top position of producing the most valuable textiles, fabrics in the world. And the biggest of designers, they use Italian textiles to make their products. Now, Italy covers the entire range of fibers, including cotton, linen, silk, and wool. And Italian textile industry is strongly export oriented with an export value of $36.57 billion. Now, this is despite the fact that Italy is part of Europe, it is a developed nation, the cost of living, the cost of capital, the labor cost, the cost of infrastructure, everything is very expensive, and yet Italian textile industry has been able to eke out an export value of $36.57 billion, pretty much equal to India. India is a developing nation, and Italy being able to dominate a labor intensive industry is commendable by any standards. Now, the textile industry of Italy, it shows a more solid production structure with innovative technologies. Italy has been known for innovation. They are the best when we talk about the textile finishes and textile washes. The entire world borrows technology from Italy when it comes to textile processing and textile washes. The product innovation of Italy is entirely focused on the technical performance of fabrics and yarns to extend the areas of application. Italy has been a forerunner in this area, and Italy is producing a large range of e-textiles, smart textiles, with new technologies to provide benefits to the wearer. Now, smart textiles are such textiles which have chips embedded in it, and it has a lot of sensors to it. E-textile also includes such kind of textiles which can change colors, and it is aesthetically as beautiful. You cannot see any of the wires dangling out, and it can process a lot of data which is being captured, something like your body heat and the way the temperature is changing, or your heartbeat and things like that. All of that is part of e-textile, and Italy is one of the largest player in e-textiles, a fastly growing category in textile and clothing sector. Now we will talk about Turkey. Turkey is in between Europe and Asia. Uh, Turkey is the farther easternmost country in Europe, and is a country which has been known to supply textile and clothing to the rest of Europe since many decades. Turkey has been cost effective, has had cheap factors of production because of which it has been able to supply to Europe, being a part of Europe, and it is one of the key nations which has been manufacturing for brands like Zara, H&M, El Corte, Corte Fiel. Now, the textile and clothing industry of Turkey has an important role in world textile trade with the capability to meet the high standard and a broad range of products. The Turkish production and export of the industry have shifted from low value added commodities to high value added manufactured items and fashionable goods. And it is very interesting to see that many of the countries which today occupy the top 10 positions, most of them had started with producing low value added commodities, making basic products. And eventually, as the cost of production grew, as the cost of factors of production grew, almost all of them were forced to start making value added products in which the margins are higher, and by making the same quantity of products, you are able to generate more surplus, and that is the only way you will be able to survive despite the increasing cost of factors of production, land, labor and capital. So the story for Turkey has been the same. It has transitioned from low value added commodities to high value added manufactured items and fashionable goods. The export value of Turkey textile industry has reached a value of $27.56 billion. The Turkish textile and clothing industry has amazing design capacity, high-tech solutions. It has dynamic and flexible production capacity. It has the most dynamic and flexible production capacity because they are the ones who have actually helped Zara achieve the status of a company which can do a new collection every 15 days. So it's primarily because of the flexible production capacity of Turkey that Zara has been able to achieve that status of the fastest fashionable brand in the world. Having said that, Turkey is one such nation which is seriously concerned about the quality, health and environment. With that, we come to USA, one of the largest country in the world, most prosperous, and USA also happens to be historically important in that Massachusetts, which is the east coast of America, USA, Massachusetts was the region where the clothing industry started. It was the first clothing industry in the world, clothing manufacturing industry. And from there, the clothing manufacturing spread to the rest of the world. So that's the historic significance of USA. United States till date is a globally competitive manufacturer and exporter of textile raw materials, fabrics, yarns, apparel, home furnishing and other textile products. The American brands are the biggest brands in the world. When we talk about apparel, Walmart is from USA, Sag Harbor and Abercrombie and Fitch, Gap. There are some of the largest brands in textile and clothing come from USA, and they have been a large exporter of textile raw materials, fabric yarns, apparel, home furnishing, other textile products. The cotton from America, the highlands of America, it's called Pima cotton, and a superior version of that is called Supima cotton. Supima cotton, the quality of this cotton is second only to Egyptian cotton. And United States is the 8th largest textile exporter with the exported value of $27.14 billion. Now, USA happens to be the most developed nation, and the cost of capital, labor, and infrastructure is the highest. And yet, they are a prominent textile and clothing exporter in the world. Despite the adverse conditions faced by the textile and clothing manufacturers in America, they still have been able to maintain this position. For how long, we do not know. One thing which may turn the table is the introduction of artificial intelligence in the manufacturing of garments. One such factory is already put in place in Arkansas, and a few other factories are also taking shape. These factories are unique in that they employ SOBOTs, SEWBOTS, SOBOTs. The entire handling of raw material and conversion of fabric into garments is being done by these bots, the SOBOTs. And with a reasonable level of success, there will be more number of factories coming in the future, and once that happens, USA may be able to snatch away a large part of apparel exports from the rest of the world. If we talk about the strength of the US textiles, USA is very strong in non-wovens, specialty and industrial fabrics, medical textiles, and protective apparel. Protective apparel for people working in hazardous conditions, something like COVID-19. So you have the hazmat suit, and then there are medical textiles for the patients, for the doctors, for other workers, health workers, then industrial fabrics which are used in various types of industries, and then there are specialty fabrics for swimmers, fabric for people living in the Arctic and Antarctica for various occasions, and then of course non-wovens are such fabrics which don't categorize under wovens or knits, and form a very large chunk of the industrial requirement of textile products. Also, the US is technically very advanced in textile and clothing sector, which is making companies invest in the US textile market. USA has been strong in textiles, so on particularly those textiles which can be entirely made using the machines. Since they have been, USA has been strong in textile manufacturing machinery and equipment, and wherever the intervention of labor is very less, USA has been able to create a large niche for themselves. Then we come to Hong Kong, very interesting, and holds the 9th position today. It's a small province, metropolitan area, comes under China, but then is governed by the rules which are more democratic in nature rather than communist rule that is there existing in China. The textile industry of Hong Kong is well known for its dyed and printed fabric. Also, the country is one of the biggest manufacturer and exporter of cotton spinning, denim weaving, knit to shape panel knitting, and fine gauge cotton knitting. The fine gauge cotton knitting is something which not all the nations are able to achieve. And then, of course, we have denim weaving and then cotton spinning. Hong Kong is very good in that, strong in that area. And with the exported value of $20 billion, Hong Kong is the 9th largest textile and clothing exporter of the world. Hong Kong is just a city, and yet it occupies 9th position, which is really formidable. And then we come to a very, very peculiar player, Spain. Spain is one of the westernmost country in Europe, other than Portugal and Ireland and United Kingdom. And Spain is a developed nation, and yet as an exception, it has been continuously growing and now has entered the top 10 league, top 10 countries which are exporters of textile and clothing. Now, the textile and textile machine manufacturing is one of the largest industries in Spain. Spain is the largest player which manufactures textile machines. Now, ranging from spinning and fabric weaving to dyeing and finishing, they manufacture all kind of machinery. Spain is the 10th largest exporter with a value of $20 billion. $20 billion may seem less, but then they have been continuously climbing the ranks, climbing the ladder, and have entered the top 10 list. Now, Spain's textile trade and creation have also made it a prime area for fashion. Barcelona is the fashion capital of Spain, although the national capital is Madrid, and Spain has been a very prominent player when we talk about fashion, and Spain is continuously moving forward to reach new heights in textile and fashion world. So with that, we come to the end of this particular section where we have talked about the top 10 players or top 10 exporters of textile and clothing. After having looked at the top 10 countries, top 10 exporters of textile and clothing, it gives us a very clear understanding of what are those driving factors because of which a nation is able to perform exceptionally well in the textile and clothing exports and is able to occupy one of the positions in the top 10 category. I hope the session has been useful. Thank you.